Tehran will burn. I'm Adm Smerconish. Today in New York City, that warning from the Israeli defense minister. It comes after Israel and Iran traded missile attacks overnight. The two nations, long at odds, now locked in one of the most dangerous military exchanges in decades. In Tel Aviv, residential buildings destroyed, 3 killed, dozens injured. In Tehran, Iran says over 100 dead, mostly civilians. Israel claims that it's taken out top Iranian military commanders and nuclear scientists, including the head of the IRGC. Israeli strikes leveled part of the Natanz nuclear facility, a key pillar of Iran's enrichment program, confirmed by the UN's nuclear watchdog. Now Iran is vowing, quote, severe punishment, even as questions loom over whether talks with the U.S. will move forward this weekend. President Trump, for his part, says Iran should cut a deal before there's nothing left. Joining me now, Admiral James Stavridis, CNN senior military analyst, a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, and David Sanger, CNN political and national security analyst. He's also the White House and national security correspondent for the New York Times. Admiral, first to you, there have been previous volleys of missiles between Israel and Iran last October, a year ago, April. Always Israel very successful in defending herself. Is that because Iran is so ineffective, or is it that Iran in the past hasn't wanted to escalate, and does this time appear different?
It's a bit of both. So Iran clearly has been knocked back by the recent strikes. I'm sure the Israelis put a lot of special attention, shall we say, on ballistic missile launching sites, on the ability of the Iranians to reconstitute those ballistic missiles, because that's really the principal threat. So Iran's been knocked back. And then secondly, it's pretty clear at this point that Iran does not want to drag the United States into this war. So they're trying to thread a bit of a needle here. And I'll close with this, Michael. A third element that you didn't mention is just how capable the Israeli air defenses are. Yes, it looks like one did get through tragically, but we're now running 200, 300 shoot downs of ballistic missiles over the strikes from Iran. And oh, by the way, my beloved Navy was on site and apparently shot down one of them from one of our Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, similar to the one I used to command. So it's a combination of those three things at this point.
David Sanger, was President Trump involved in a ruse? Was he saying one thing publicly but doing another privately?
Well, Michael, he certainly knew more than he was letting on at the time, although it was becoming clear to all of us during the middle of the week that the Israelis were getting ready to strike. The surprise here was that they struck before the weekend and thus seemed to have completely undermined the diplomatic effort that President Trump had underway. And Thursday afternoon, before the strikes, you may remember that the president said, well, if they do strike, it could well blow up the negotiations. Might help them, he said, but would probably blow them up. But I think it's worth sort of backing off, in addition to what we heard from Admiral Stavridis about what happened in the missile exchange, to focus on what this was all about, which was, of course, the nuclear program. And we reported in the Times last night that, in fact, so far, the Iranians have not made a huge dent in what is a sprawling nuclear complex. Certainly, they've hit the Natanz site, as you mentioned. That's the largest of the enrichment sites. But it doesn't appear that they used ammunition that would go down deep into the centrifuge halls, which is where most of the work is done. I'm sure they wouldn't be able to reconstitute Natanz for a year or two, but the fear here is, of course, that you drive the nuclear program underground. And they haven't touched the fuel that is closest to bomb grade, stored in a place called Isfahan, a former ancient capital of Iran, that is, of course, the closest pathway the Iranians have to the war, to a bomb.
Admiral Stavridis, the Israelis claim that they've decimated the senior leadership in Iran's military structure. From a military perspective, how quickly and effectively can those ranks be refilled?
They can be quickly refilled. That's what any military security structure is primed to do. There's a deputy, there's a chief operations officer. You can fleet them up pretty quickly, but you can't replace that level of experience, and you can't instantly replace access to those leaders, to the highly classified information that Iran holds. Think of it this way. This was a day in which Marco Rubio, in his hat as national security advisor, would have been killed alongside the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Kane. That's a big blow to any organization. And then secondly, beyond simply fleeting somebody up, it's a morale issue. Now all the other leaders are laying in their bunks at night wondering when the next thing that's going to drop is. Hey, one final comment to David's excellent summary of how hard this was hit. What the Israelis lack is the massive ordnance penetrator GBU-57. We fly it on a B-2 Spirit bomber. It's also known colloquially as the bunker busting bomb, BBB, not to be confused with the big, beautiful bill. That is the weapon to watch. If the United States gets into this, watch for those B-2s to get involved. Without those, Israel is going to have a hard time really knocking this program out.
Quick final question for David Sanger. Does history tell us whether Iranians, the civilians, will rally around their flag? How do they feel about this?
Well, they are certainly rallying right now because they're looking at attacks on their cities and, of course, some civilian casualties along the way. President Trump and certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu are of the view that this could well spark a turn against the Iranian theocratic government. History does not suggest that this happens all that often. Usually there's more anger at the attacker than there is even at a repressive internal government. But that's the big bet that is underway now by both Prime Minister Netanyahu and, on the sidelines to some degree, the United States.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, I asked that question because of the Netanyahu speech that was directly toward the civilians of Iran. We appreciate both of you.